Welcome everybody. This is about maximizing profitability and reducing costs and driving efficiency. My name is Taj Adhav, and I am the guy who put two words that probably don't belong next to each other. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Leasecake. We're a operating system for location management. Think of us as location management made easy. In our journey over the last 5 years, we've had tens of thousands of locations in our platform, serving across North America and geos outside, as well as thousands of customer companies. And we're so humbled and privileged to be here today with our customers and our partners and very influential operators of all different types. So let's go ahead and jump in. We'll do some introductions. Marie, why don't you kick us off? A little background on yourself, how long you've been at White Castle. And
Absolutely. So I'm Marie Tullidge. I'm the Senior Development Manager at White Castle. So that means I'm responsible for all of our real estate assets, deferred maintenance, new construction, and new sites for development, as well as our industrial and multifamily redevelopments.
Excellent. Schatzy.
Michael Schatzberg, also known as Schatzy. New York City restaurant operator, 15 full-service fine dining restaurants on the island of Manhattan.
Jeff Melnick, I'm president of Boston Pizza US. We have 450 restaurants in North America. I take care of the United States. Before that, I was with Red Robin for 10 years, Gordon Biersch for 3, and Chili's before that.
Eric Easton, I'm Chief Financial Officer for Ampex Brands. We're a portfolio restaurant company that owns restaurants in the franchisee space under the Yum flags, as well as own the brands Bella Green and Au Bon Pain. We also operate 7-Elevens, and then we own a sizable real estate portfolio that we lease to both ourselves and the third-party restaurant operators and retail operators. I oversee all the financial operations and capital allocation for our business and all of our portfolio companies, as well as some other shared services functions as well.
Wonderful. Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I always like to kick things off with a funny story, and I think, Jeff, you had shared a story about the Boston's Pizza name, right? Yeah. It's a great brand, it's a great city. Tell us a little bit more.
Well, we were having a conversation in the corner, and everybody looks at me. The first question is always, where is one? And then the other one is what's a Boston Pizza? So we're a 60-year-old brand. 3 Greek immigrant brothers went from Greece through the United States, landed in Vancouver, built 3 restaurants. They'd never, other than transferring or seeing the name Boston, we've never had a restaurant in Boston. There is no such thing as a Boston Pizza. They just thought it sounded really cool 60 years ago when they brought pizza to Canada and nobody knew what pizza was. So our owner, who's now grown the business, has maintained that. It was Boston Pizza and Spaghetti House. Now in Canada, it's Boston Pizza. Down here, it's Boston's Pizza. But that's the story. So
there you go. Had nothing to do with originating out of Boston,
no.
Of all things. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing the story. I put together this panel because there's such diverse backgrounds, right? White Castle, 101 years old, incredible storied brand. We got fine dining represented. We've got pizza. And with Ampex Brands, how many brands do you have, Eric?
8 all in.
Let's hear the names. Let's hear the names.
So KFC, Taco Bell, Long John Silver's, Pizza Hut, A&W, Au Bon Pain, Bella Green, 7-Eleven. I think I'm missing one in there too. I think I might be 9. No. It's 8.
So you were, and we'll dig into this a little bit later. But as a franchisee, obviously very powerful, very large, influential. You're now a franchisor, so there's got to be a story there.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple story. So Tabasum Mumtaz, who is our primary shareholder in the business, he owns the majority of the business. Came to the United States in the 1990s from Pakistan. He was a rower for the national rowing team. Shortly after he arrived in the United States, his father passed away, and so he had to find a way to eat. And his friends told him, if you ever want to eat, go work in a restaurant. So he started working as a cook in a Wendy's and a Long John Silver's, became the youngest Wendy's franchisee at the time ever, grew that business, and then became a Yum franchisee. So by the time I arrived at the business in 2019, he was growing, and one of the things we realized was that you can't sort of put all your eggs in one basket. You have to start diversifying your business as you get larger. And we wanted to sort of pare back what we were doing in a franchisee space and deploy capital in other places. And we're great restaurateurs, and we had an executive team that came out of restaurant backgrounds of places like Brinker. I came out of Ignite Restaurant Group. Had people from Raising Cane's. We had a lot of executives from other restaurant groups. We had a lot of expertise. And so we started branching out, and what made the most sense and the most freedom to be able to create wealth out of acquisitions was by owning restaurant brands. And so we first went after a couple different deals and really looked for things in the franchisor space because we thought we had an opportunity there to be a good franchisor. And Au Bon Pain came along, and we purchased it from Panera about a year and a half ago.
Wow. So how do you manage, your internal team, absorbing all the back office operations of your real estate team with Au Bon Pain? How did that all work out?
Yeah, so the reality, we have a great chief development officer. He was also mayor of Carrollton, Texas. He's now a commissioner in Denton County, Texas. And his background was Zales and Brinker. And so really a sharp guy, came from a multi-brand company. He'd also been with Yum Brands as well. And our back office team, we see the business as sort of a commodity of shared services. Right, you have to have people that specialize in certain things when it comes to brands, but those are like heavily related to marketing and a little bit in development. But from a finance perspective, accounting and all those other aspects of the business, it's a commodity. It's a restaurant, right? And all restaurants I get are different, and they all operate differently, but they all have the same P&L line items. You just have to understand how to shift your brain from one brand to the other, right? And find out what's important there. So what we do is we have a small leadership team, but we have a very broad middle management team that oversees the individual brands. And then the individual brands also have brand presidents ahead of them that oversee them, and they manage sort of that brand alone and don't cross-pollinate. Right now, I'm the only person in the business that's cross-pollinating across brands. Because we have a couple executives that we're looking to hire for. And so right now I'm also running a couple brands, but I'll step out of that role in the next probably 6 to 9 months.
Got it. Okay, so as we look at location management, putting some structure into this conversation over the next 30 minutes or so, and we'll have time for Q&A for sure. I think we've got a mic runner out in the audience. Location management is really about finding location, then building it, then operating it, then adapting. So let's talk about finding a location. Marie, maybe you can shed some light on White Castle's unique needs, right? Your unique real estate needs, and,
Sure.
and elaborate on your team.
Sure. And I've worked on site selection for other firms that I've worked with before this that included medical office and mixed retail use. So for White Castle, this has been a fun opportunity for me to do things a little bit differently. I can say from the profitability standpoint that we've started working backwards on a good deal of our project processes. So for example, if we already know the critical dates that our modeling is telling us that we have to hit, we plug that in and start working backwards from sites that have a feasibility or a possibility of opening up within that time frame. And I imagine that's even more important from a franchising perspective, but I can tell you for us, the rent clocks start always faster than we want them to. So we start plugging in what does our entitlement schedule look like, our permitting schedule, and more than ever before, White Castle is paying for preliminary due diligence from everything from the basic title work and survey all the way out to meeting with the municipalities well in advance of going to town.
Great. Share a little bit about the team structure. Are you looking to, have you consolidated all the different hats and organized how you manage consultants?
Sure. And so my department is called Development Operations Services. And so our function is the entirety of the built environment. And with each of those segments in the past, we had maybe a series of semi-autonomous subject matter experts that were working on very siloed and specific job functions. Now we have a holistic project management approach, that standard PMP angle where every project, no matter how unique or different, gets put into the same process management. So, I mean, that's resulted in reduced positions in total for our department. But more importantly than that, it's resulted in a more streamlined and collaborative environment where each of us have a role that spans for the whole project life cycle. So we have a single PM, we have a single management structure, and then we have one internal construction rep.
Got it. Jeff, why don't you elaborate, on your unique position now, just heading up the U.S. and how your team is structured and getting business done?
Well, I'll tell you, post-COVID, our team is dramatically different. It's we have a department of one, and we had a few other people there that were really working on leasing and site selection and things, but found that leveraging the broker network and then just using data and paying for some data that's available out there has been very helpful. But in our situation, because we go from Jacksonville to Seattle and sprinkled in between, we really don't have a territory necessarily that we really have a lot of brokers that we can leverage and things. So once we find a franchise partner that decides this is the area I want to develop, then we'll go and find the broker and we'll start working with them in that manner. But we're also looking at a lot of different non-traditional opportunities that we haven't in the past. Our owner previously was very set into, no, we're going to build a 6,500 square foot and it's going to have two sides and it has all this, and that just isn't practical anymore. So we've been able to win that battle and convince them, and now we're down to 4,500 to 5,000 square feet. We're looking at ventless ovens, which is, again, kind of a sacred cow that we would never do something like that. And we're now doing that so we can get into smaller spaces, non-conventional spaces. We're going into hotels. We have, of the 7 restaurants I have in construction right now, 4 of them are hotels. So we're looking to see where we can fit the brand in, and there's some great synergy between maybe a franchisee who has a Marriott property and then who wants to diversify their income stream and then bring us into that business as well. So they generate 2 revenue streams that way. Traditionally in a hotel, food is a loss leader for them. They budget to lose money in it because it's always been dictated that they had to use a Marriott brand or whatever else. And now that they're allowing them to go and seek other franchises, this is an opportunity for us to turn that from a loss to a gain. And they're already paying the rent either way, so it's a win-win for them.
Nice. How do you find those opportunities in those non-traditional, like in the hotels? Do you work with brokers? Are they the ones surfacing them, or the chains are reaching out to you?
No, really, we're really leveraging the current franchise group we have. There's 2 or 3 very large conferences across the country that we've been showing at for the last 4 years, and we're really starting to see traffic from that. And they're all very interconnected, so we're getting a tremendous referral pipeline as well.
Great to hear. So, Schatzy, in terms of Michael or Schatz?
Schatzy?
There you go.
Okay.
I like it. Fine dining, restaurants, New York City. Tell me how you find your locations. Do you lean on outside real estate brokers? You've got a real estate team. How does that process work in?
Yeah, it's a great question. First, we are very unique on this panel as we have no franchises. We are all single unit, fine dining, chef-driven concepts. So we have no kind of cookie cutting in our portfolio. We look at locations, and and most of that's driven by, we've been in New York City for over 30 years. So I think when you're in a market for so long and you're successful, I think a lot of times the landlords seek us out. They know when leases are coming up. They know when leases aren't being renewed. A lot of times the landlords have access to the operator that's currently in the location's financials, so they know how they're doing. So they'll, reach out to us months ahead of something, a lease coming up. And so generally not with brokers. It's usually direct with landlords. And it's really built on a relationship with landlords, and it's really like location. For us, we look at corners on the avenue. As I said, it takes as much time and energy and bandwidth to open a 100-seat restaurant, 50-seat restaurant. It does a 250-seat restaurant for us. So we'd rather look at things that are over 200 seats, 250 seats today. The cost to build a little bit more, obviously, but at the end of the day, we're looking for high volume, restaurants with, the minimum we can do is, $7-8 million out of a store for us. And like I said, it's really, it doesn't matter about the size, the shape. It's really just the opportunity, generally corner location on the avenue. And then once we find the space, then we figure out what we're going to do with it. Like, what's the neighborhood need? What's missing in the neighborhood? And then we work completely backwards. We have no name, no concept, no chef, no idea. We just have a space.
Wow, that's interesting. So very opportunistic. Does when the landlord reaches out to you, do you find that there's leverage that you have? I mean, because your brand, yeah.
If you've been in business a long time, then that's the leverage. The landlord knows they're going to get paid every month, and you're going to sign a lease for 15 or 20 years. You can get, and they know they don't have to worry about being paid, and that's, I think, what drives them. Right. And we look at locations that have been around a long time. Generally, the locations we take were existing restaurants. So they had a track record. Then something happened. A restaurant. We just opened a restaurant on 50th Street between Park and Madison, Manhattan. It had been a Alan Stillman restaurant. Alan Stillman fame for founder of TGIF. So this was Maloney Pacelli. It's an old steakhouse, been around for like 28 years. That location came available. If it was at that location for 28 years, we got a good sense that location is good. So then it was just a matter of now making the deal, and we opened that location in October.
Got it. So I think universally, operators are always looking for that high traffic corner of Main and Main. Is that what you're seeing, Eric? In terms of your rollout strategy, I think you've got some unique opportunities.
Yeah,
with your brands.
we're a little different as well. Our franchisee space we're the franchisee. We have distinct operating areas where we remain focused in. And because we are partnered with Yum Brands on those specific sites, Yum has a very developed development team that partners with us on picking real estate. We do a lot of our own selection in the areas where we know, because we know where we're at. We've reduced our portfolio over the last few years to be very centralized in the areas of the country where we know we have a lot of success at, and we know those markets well. In that space in particular, we try to buy dirt as much as we possibly can to add it to our real estate portfolio. It's just one of our strategies that we have for long-term holds. In Audubon Pond's a little bit different. So Audubon Pond, we are focusing our energy around hospitals, transportation centers, universities, which is a completely different market to go into. And it's an interesting market to get in, because a lot of the people that own and operate in those places are Aramark, Sodexo, Compass. You're dealing with multinational firms that operate at least domestically, if not throughout the world. And so we have a lot of great partnerships with those folks that help us find those places. And same thing he does with the hotel conferences. We hit higher education conferences. We hit every place we can go that we know that hospital food folks will be at, university food folks will be at, to make sure that we're letting people know we're there. Bella Green is the last one. Bella Green has a specific demographic that eats at that restaurant. It's more of a high net worth, and we have to be in a place where those sites can do $4 to $6 million. And so that's a little more challenging. So we're opening one in San Antonio right now. We'll have one open by the end of the year in Austin. And we're going in those areas where the rent's just generally going to be more expensive, not like New York rents. But it's going to be in the $50 to $60 a foot range in the areas where we're at. And we're going to be in buildings surrounded by high net worth areas, right? So if you look in Frisco, Texas, lots of places around Houston where we're at, every place we're going, we're looking for a specific demographic, and then we go find the place there.
How many seats are in Bella Green, like you said?
It depends on the cafe or on the restaurant. So the ones that we're building right now have about 105 to 110. They do have very large kitchens because they're full service. I like to call it polished casual with a fast casual model, service model. So it's a full service scratch kitchen. So the box may be 3,500 to 4,000 square feet, but we're only getting about 105 to 110 seats because there's so much kitchen in there.
Are you seeing any efficiencies? Do you put any of your concepts next to each other, whether it's inline strip centers, anything like that?
We are doing that right now. So we bought some dirt in Seagoville, Texas. We're going to put a Taco Bell, I believe a Taco Bell, a 7-Eleven, and a Kentucky Fried Chicken between two buildings. Yeah, it's between two buildings. And the 7-Eleven will have some retail space next to it as well. So we are doing that. The consumer of the Taco Bell's a little different because it's a much younger crowd. The consumer at Pizza Hut doesn't care where you're at, in my opinion. You just have to be where they can deliver to you, right? The consumer for KFC is a much different consumer than our typical Au Bon Pain consumer or Bella Green. So a lot of times we wouldn't pick the same areas and we don't get the efficiency. In that case, in Seagoville, we get a lot of efficiency out of those multi-branded site.
Okay. What's your growth plans? I mean, you've got like these 8 brands. Which one is growing the fastest, 2024 and beyond?
I think that for us, from ground up, we're fulfilling development obligations in Kentucky Fried Chicken and sort of waiting to see what happens in that brand. Pizza Hut, we're happy with our portfolio the way it is today. Opportunistically, if something comes up, we'll look at it. Bella Green is really our growth vehicle. So we're looking to it's at 8, it'll be 10 by the end of this year. We're looking to get 20 in the next 2 years to make that a more sizable business. We are actually in Au Bon Pain, we're shrinking and growing at the same time. So we're shrinking our corporate base through closures and city center locations that don't make sense anymore, or at least not right now, don't make sense for us. And then we're growing heavily in our partner relationships with the different large universities and other partners. So we're opening, I think we'll have another 6 restaurants or 6 cafes open this year, which is not a gigantic number, but it's the first year we've seen of real growth since we acquired the brand in the middle of 2021.
Okay. Is it consistent across all 4 of you that you don't necessarily have a full-time in-house real estate team, brokerage team? You lean on outside brokers?
I can go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I would say that I was part of the original real estate team, and we identified that the department required restructuring. And so me and my immediate boss had done that only, and now we've absorbed the entirety of the construction footprint, precisely because it's hard to justify leaving it at real estate when so many different touch points with those transactions require both the construction and the real estate perspective. And I liked this thinking about consolidation because for White Castle, that's been very important. Our new markets are south, out west, destination markets, and those are markets that are brand new for White Castle. So while that's exciting, it comes with a lot of change, a lot of reassessment for the warm weather prototype. And we're also looking at opportunities in our most dense urban zones for optimization, where we have reduced warehousing footprint, or even in some cases a store footprint, to redevelop into apartment units. And we're really excited about that, both in Columbus and in Indianapolis.
Okay. Schatzy, maybe you already touched on that with the situation in New York.
Yeah, in New York for us, it's very unique, and it really is based on the opportunities. A great location comes available, or we do a lot of off-market. It's really off-market deals for us. So brokers generally, we don't work with brokers. We get it before a broker gets it, and the landlords like it that way. They save on commissions and things like that, and then if we save on commissions, we get a better deal. So we love going direct.
Got it. Jeff, why don't you take this question? I'm going to add a question to you, like the time it takes to go from an LOI to a lease, if you can respond to that as well as your approach.
Yeah, it's unique, as everybody knows. Really depends on where. In California, my experience not only with Boston's Pizza, but certainly with Red Robin and Chili's, we were 24 months. from the time we saw the piece of dirt we wanted to the time we could get it open, and that was mostly just because of the government. Whereas in Texas, you can cut that by 2/3. So it really depends. Again, in our world, we usually have a small franchise group that is developing 3 to 5 in a market. The first one's always the slowest because they're really being cautious about where they want to be and how they want to get going. And then while we do have a prototype, quite frankly, a lot of the space we're going into is not prototypical. So we'll try to take our kitchen, because our kitchen is prototypical, we'll wedge that into wherever we can with a few modifications, and the dining room will flex to whatever that space is. But that's where getting drawings, getting into CAD, getting it through permitting will impact that. But I find most of it is once you take the franchisee out of it and they get through the debating of, well, I don't want that color. It's, well, that's our color. I don't know what to tell you. You signed the paper. I don't know what to tell you. Once we get through that part, then it's, I'd say, 13 to 15 months.
Understood. Okay. Eric?
Again, it depends where we're at.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends where you're at. But I think we can move as fast as our in-house counsel moves.
Okay.
So we're in the lease, both leases we took, got into LOIs and took about 3 months to get a lease hammered out. And that was primarily driven by the fact that we had other things going on the plate. So it just took attorneys more time to get it across the finish line. But, you know, I think leases aren't really that complicated as much as they used to be, right? And so, you know, we're used to seeing the same stuff over and over again. And so we know what we will do and what we won't do. And we know if it's a site that we like the LOI, we try to bake as much into the LOI, make that as much of a negotiation as possible so that we can just focus on the LOI as our lease tool. And it doesn't usually take us very long. It literally is, if it sits on the time that it takes for us is all about how long it sits on the attorney's desk.
100%. Okay. So this will wrap up the find section. We'll move into build outs. Marie, how does White Castle manage build outs with the small team and, you know, your unique operating resources?
Sure. We batch those by region, and so if it's an existing region, these are going to be remodels, extra construction, any type of deferred maintenance. And as we go, our biggest enemy is the weather. Again, going back to why we're doing warm weather now. Being up in the Northeast and Midwest is also going to be the most contentious municipality situation. So same as what's been described already up here. You know that it's going to take you 3 to 6 months to get through even basic permitting. And we're also increasingly running into municipal resistance to drive-throughs, where there's a push locally for higher utilization of sites. We never retrofit, and as a result, as soon as we move a brick, we're sometimes having to navigate the negotiation with the city about why we still want to have a drive-through when we rebuild. You lose your permitted rights as soon as you've made those changes. So that's a change for White Castle. In the destination models, these are more complex buildings, and we're actually getting bigger and bigger over time. So those take that much longer for feasibility analysis to go back to that due diligence element of soils we're not used to, GCs we're not used to, just navigating a new market.
So your new location, I don't know if it's necessarily the newest, the one that you built in Orlando, talk about the size and the footprint and the process that
Well, it's
you went
actually
through.
interesting to juxtapose all of our most recent units. So the most recent ones are a storefront in Coney Island, a destination inline space in Manhattan, and then the destination in Scottsdale and Orlando. And it's interesting to juxtapose from those regional differences, just the sheer volume of time difference with the entitlements, I would say again. So in Manhattan, we were dealing with that for over a year just to get utilities hooked up, as opposed to in Arizona and Orlando, where of course those issues weren't in place. But each one we have to start fresh since they're new models. Our hope is, you know, that traditional hub and spoke model can follow any destination market, but that's always future looking, right? We're always looking at new locations.
Yeah. I think when your opening happened, I think you shut down our biggest interstate through Orlando for at least 6 hours. It was crazy the following.
Making
madness.
memorable moments since where all the Midwesterners had moved down south. So, yeah, for our new destination units, we do have to come up with a traffic plan and a backup power plan and all kinds of things that we never used to have to fool with up north. So,
You got a ton of cravers.
yeah, it's an exciting time, and people camped outside to have that. So, I'm sure we can all imagine why. That's exciting to think about.
That's great. Expand a little bit about your team. How have you changed the roles and managing consultants and contractors to do your build outs, if you could?
Sure. Well, we've consolidated everything to one architect running each piece. So we have anywhere from 3 to 8 architectural firms that we bid each job every time. They come back with their proposals, and it's going to go to the best price, obviously. But then that architect is going to manage everything else from civil to geotech. We keep our risk management reviews in-house, and having a single PM with a single consultant has enabled us to at least give leadership a better window into what to expect from timing. I consider one of the most important parts of my job is that leadership and operations, stakeholder communications, because as you all know, you're trying to schedule staff, you're trying to interview, you're trying to plan for training, and a volatile construction market is making that very expensive, and it impacts not just those schedules, but bonuses, sales, what you're going to make for the year. So navigating those changes as they come and communicating it more efficiently at an operations level has become crucial for us.
Yeah. From a collaboration perspective, how do you get stuff done with all the different moving pieces and keeping everyone on the same page and these deadlines that you've got to hit for opening?
Sure, yeah, I mean, it's integrated from a portfolio perspective. So every day we're circulating to every person in the company that subscribes to that information. Obviously, my projected dates, my cost versus actual, my original estimates, which GC is working on it, which construction rep is working on it, and that level of transparency and consistency from the portfolio perspective has come to be very valuable even to the field and operations. Groups that didn't used to be privy to the information coming out of home office or corporate now are getting to see that in real time like the rest of us, and frankly report back from the field things that oftentimes the corporate presence would miss and not be aware of because we're not there in the field with them.
Okay. Schatzy,
Yes.
describe the unique characteristics of New York and build outs. I'm sure there's stories.
Yes, I
you could share.
was smiling because yes, New York is it's a difficult city to do business in, to say the least. It's very dense. 8.5 million people. We got mostly large, tall buildings. So I think for us, certainly we're looking at restaurants that were already existing, where they have the venting in place, because that's a big part. If the venting is in place, you want to try and eliminate as much of that process of going through permitting. And what I mean by that is if it was already a restaurant, it already has venting, that's a big plus. If there was already a liquor license there, that's a big plus. Because the idea of you having to try and apply for a liquor license that wasn't a liquor license there, you get the whole neighborhood can go, and that could set you back. And and when you're picking up a lease, I mean, you don't know if you're going to get these things. So if for us, if we take a location that's already been a restaurant, that already has a liquor license, that has the venting in place, you're way ahead, and then we know we're gonna get all those things. So that's really important for us, and we for the most part have our own teams that we've used for years on design, and the trades are all the same, and then you've got, if it's a gut renovation or is it cosmetic. So you're looking at, it could be a 12 to 18 month process if it's a gut renovation, but again, you had some infrastructure there. And whether it's the HVAC and the ventilation, et cetera. And then cosmetic, it could be, under a year. So it could be like 6 to 9 months maybe if it's just a cosmetics.
To get to opening?
Exactly.
I got it. Okay. Jeff, you want to elaborate on maybe anything unique about Boston's Pizza?
Again, we don't have a necessarily department, but we do have our whole group comes together, and we use what we call as a 20-week work back. So when we're 20 weeks away from opening, we have a process that we go through. So we started construction, we hit to where they're getting dried in, and now we're starting to really, we know it's going to happen. We feel comfortable with the development pipeline. Weather's not going to be an issue, although it still factors in. And then we start meeting on a weekly basis. everybody, operations, the franchisee, the contractor, the general contractor. We get trades on various trades if we need to, our equipment specialist, and we're just talking dates. Are you going to make this? Have you had the permit? When are you going to get the COO? And as long as that continues to plod along, they fly their team out. They train for 3 weeks in our training location. We fly our 10 people out there. We train their 100 people. So it really works out quite well, and it's pretty easy to maneuver through once we know we hit that magic date.
Got it. So 20 weeks from the point of a signed lease to opening, which is that what I'm hearing?
No, not from signed lease. I wish it was that fast.
Okay.
No, it's really from, we've gotten all the, at least concrete's about to pour.
Okay.
We're going vertical, and that's about where we can say we're about 20 weeks out. So the base is in, but it really depends. 20 weeks could be really almost from lease if it's just a renovation. And again, to Schatzy's point, if it's cosmetic, or how much work do we have to do? So that's where it doesn't matter what the front end is. When we hit that magic time, then we can really nail it into how quickly we move it. There's been some, we opened Deadwood in less than 3 months. Well, 20 weeks, we just had to do the first 5 weeks really fast. So checked all those boxes.
Yeah, so generally your scorecard on your 20 weeks is plus or minus? Like how are you doing on that?
Right, yeah. Well, hell, I have one in, that's 3 years behind schedule that's still under construction that now will open in July. So COVID was part of the problem, but
100%.
Shreveport, Louisiana is part of the problem too.
Got it. Eric, give us some examples of build-outs.
Yes, we've opened, I think we built about all in like 10 or 12 restaurants last year across different brands. And if we're building in Texas, at least on our franchisee side, we use the same people over and over again. So we have we use the same architects and pretty much the same design firms, and we are able to build them very quickly, especially since we own the dirt. In Texas, at least for our franchisee brands where we operate there, is generally a pretty friendly place to execute. Ohio, Northern Ohio, and Southern Pennsylvania also is. So those are pretty quick build-outs. I'd say 6 months or less, all in. Our Audubon Ponds are a little bit more challenging because of whether it be New York or like we're opening in the Bronx right now, in Bronx Hospital, and it's just taking forever to get permitting. It could take, with an expediter, 6 to 9 months sometimes to get permitting done. So that one becomes a challenge. Our Bella Greens, we operate even in Texas, we have progressive areas, and we tend to operate those cafe or those restaurants in more progressive areas. Austin, San Antonio, parts around Houston are a little bit more progressive. The more progressive the area, typically the more green and the more regulation and the longer it takes to get permitting done and the more work you have to do. I'm not saying that there's anything bad with that, it's just a back to life, right? So our Bella Greens do take a little bit longer. We tend to schedule those out for 180 to 210 days, all in, from the time that we sign the lease until the time that we open the doors. Right now, the one we're doing in San Antonio, we're expecting to be less, but we know the one that we're opening in Austin will take some time because they're expecting a lot more green in the city of Austin than we're doing in San Antonio. And just finding the appropriate materials to get that done can be a challenge in the current environment.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Got it. So we're moving into kind of the operations side, so it's a great segue. Let's talk about technologies, Marie. So what type of technologies do you lean on that help you operate more efficiently with a smaller back-of-house team and ultimately optimize your portfolio?
Sure. White Castle is really proud to be either kind of a pioneer user or early adopter for a lot of new technologies. Of course, that includes Flippy, our partnership with Miso Robotics, as well as Julia, who's our AI drive-through. Recently, we've just converted our lease administration suite to Leasecake, which we're excited to try a startup company for property management and lease administration. And I think the spirit behind that in particular was eliminating one of the most time-consuming task loads for one of our highest turnover positions, lease admin. And so as we hone in on examples of what's taking our people the greatest amount of time, how can we lift them up out of those tasks, finding alternative technology ways to approach them. And in our mind, that means team members can refocus on customers and their colleagues rather than being frustrated with either the redundant process or the paperwork.
Yeah, thank you for the plug. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I
think
do
that's
appreciate
awesome.
that. Schatzy, you've got a lot of exposure to different technologies.
We sure do.
Yeah.
I think being in New York City with 28,000 restaurants, I think if you're a technology company and you're looking to sell into the restaurant space, I think we're fortunate that that's the city you're going to want to go. So we get exposed to a lot of technology very early. So we've been fortunate enough in our restaurant group to be early adopters of a lot of technology. I'll date myself a little bit. Open Table is a technology company that's 23, 24 years old. We started using that when it launched, and it was from San Francisco, and they opened a small office in New York. I don't even think we took reservations at our restaurants in those days. So we've been early adopters to test and vet any technology that is brought to us. And I like to say, I don't know if it's good if I don't try it and test it. So everything from what Compete, which is now Restaurant 365, we've been using that. I think Harry, who started that company, worked at Ruth's Chris, sold me our system. It's got to be 19 years ago. We were using that. Hot Schedules is another tech that we were using, and David Cantu, who founded that, I think we've been using that. It's got to be also 18 years. So we rely on any technology that is really solving problems for us. We rely on and we'll test. So it's back of the house, it's front of the house, it's online ordering, whatever it is, we will lay into it and rely on it. And just because I think it makes the team more efficient, and it just an overall better guest experience. So there's so many opportunities for great technology out there.
Absolutely, sounds good. We'll save some time for questions, but Jeff, maybe if you can perhaps elaborate any technology tools that you all use that you enable your franchisees with to help them kind of scale and grow?
Yeah, well, we have leveraged quite a few. We have the benefit of our bigger brother in Canada having vetted a lot of these and having a lot more assets and the ability to run through them, and we all run on the same point of sale, which actually is more of a hindrance than anything else, because to the point of technology, everything has to be able to work with it necessarily, right? And what we use is is kind of ancient and is not as sophisticated as some of the point of sale that are out there now. So we're taking a look at that, but particularly, COVID drove a lot, but we're working with Unifocus on building our own labor management and scheduling software that's based off of time and motion studies, so we can really try to help our franchise partners focus where the labor is when they arrive, when they depart. We've been leveraging Skooks in the back of the room. When we reopened restaurants, when we brought our team back, they were just all of a sudden doors were open. I mean, COVID lasted in Texas about 4 months. It lasted a little longer in some other places. And so all of a sudden doors were open. We had people, not the same team members we used to have. So getting them trained was very difficult. So being able to leverage some of that training technology, and particularly just because the young people right now, they're not going to listen to somebody talk to them or follow them around or even read through papers and things. So losing a lot with that. And then in the back of the house, just really continuing to try to get more efficient with process and systems for managers, as well as just nailing product prep lists and what our task list is.
Sure.
There's some task management out there as well.
Wonderful. All right, so before we turn it over to the audience for questions, let's go down maybe in one sentence, one by one. What's the one takeaway that you want the audience to pay attention to? Marie,
It's a
one
cliche.
sentence.
Don't be afraid to ask, why did we always do it this way? Even if you're 100 years old.
A good one. Schatz?
I'm going with location.
Management.
Management.
Jeff?
You know, we really didn't talk a lot about it, but I would tell you that usually there's three things you look for in a location. So it's location, demographics, and then what's it going to cost. We are absolutely adding in the availability of employees. I have restaurants, last 3 restaurants, we weren't able to open 100% because we couldn't find people. And we were hiring 7 weeks out. They're just, people are not there. And so if you're not looking to make sure that you can staff a location, it may have, because a lot of the high-end demographics, the kids don't want to work and people live too far away to get there. So you got to make sure you have that fourth element now.
Yep. Eric, one sentence or two.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I'd say about whether any area in business, and I probably say this too many times, is if you have a strategy and you're confident in your strategy, don't squirrel, right? Just stick to what you do and stick to what you know best, and try not to veer too far off course, because if you stay the course, you'll be just fine.
Fantastic. Awesome. We're ready for questions from the audience. Anyone out there? Got a mic runner. Thank you for doing that.
A lot of great questions.
Did we cover everything? My God, totally
We left
comprehensive.
them without
But
any
fine
questions.
dining, New York City, 101-year-old brand, burgers, we got Boston pizzas.
They heard it all.
Well, thank you very much, our esteemed panel.
Oh, yeah,
We do. Great. Awesome.
Hi, I'm Amber Ranzoni. I'm with Zaba's Mexican Grill based in Las Vegas. I was curious if you guys generally require your franchisees to, and the architect you guys use to manage the entire construction process or to help manage the GCs, or do you give the franchisees the authority to kind of review and make sure that the drawings and the renderings and everything's going up to process?
I don't know, Eric, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so on both sides. So we will engage as much as we are asked to engage. We have a prototype. You have to stick to the kit of parts, and we will engage as much as you want us to, but we won't manage the project for you.
Ours is a little different. We have an architect that we spec out that also will do project management. So you must use our architect, but they choose their own general contractor. Then we'll help them vet those to make sure they're comparing apples to apples when they're looking at the contractors. But as we figure, as the drawings are right, it's up to them to find the contractor.
Okay.
Answer your question?
Yeah, I believe so. So you're saying in some cases they'll use like the full suite service from your architect, and they'll do the site walks and make sure everything's up to snuff.
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you.
Excellent. Anyone else? Questions? Going once, twice. All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.